What's happening, dudes? Welcome back to Duty's Daggers, where we are talking about the Cold Steel Engage and the Atlas Lock, which is Cold Steel's kind of version of the Shark Lock in a way. Um, it is mechanically different. There's different things going on inside of here, but functionally, the way that you use it is pretty similar. It's a thing on the spine of the back of the knife, I guess you call it, that you pull down on, and it disengages the lock. Now, its position is different on the back of the knife. It's kind of further down towards the butt. But, like I said, functionally pretty similar. So I thought I would do a little comparison video and tell you what I thought about not only the Engage as a knife, but also what I think about the locking mechanism compared to the Shark Lock. So if you didn't know, Andrew Demko of Demko Knives worked at Cold Steel for a long time. He did the Scorpion Lock with Cold Steel on the AD-15. This is an Andrew Demko design with Cold Steel. He designed this Scorpion Lock with them. I think he also invented the Triad Lock too. 8010. Here's another Andrew Demko Cold Steel design. And then he kind of split off and started doing his own thing, making Demko branded knives using his Shark Lock. And after he was gone, recently Cold Steel came out with this, the Atlas Lock. And it's pretty fair to say that they were influenced by the Shark Lock, right? Would they have thought of doing this if the Shark Lock didn't exist? Maybe. I kind of think not. It's definitely not it's not a rip-off because it looks different and it functions different. But, they were heavily inspired by the Shark Lock. I think we could say that. So let's talk about the construction of the Engage real quick. We got G10 and S35BN. Saber grind, I guess drop point with a little almost harpoony kind of thing right here. Really kind of just a dip for your thumb to set in. Sharpening choil, very small, not very good at all. Needs to be enlarged, which you could do. I think. Yeah, it looks like the stop pin hits somewhere down here, so you could probably enlarge that sharpening choil. Deep carry pocket clip that looks okay, I guess. Big old lanyard hole and the Atlas Lock. So now one thing I was surprised to see when I checked this out. By the way, thanks to Jason for letting me borrow this. I didn't buy it. He sent it to me to check out. I was expecting this to be really thick and beefy because my experience with Cold Steel thus far has been really thick and beefy stuff. But I was surprised to see that it was actually really thin, and the blade stock was really thin. Definitely thinner than the 20.5. Maybe not thinner than the Shark Cub. Looks pretty similar to the Shark Cub in blade stock thickness, but it was an actual good EDC size, thinness. Speaking of thinness, and that was kind of cool. I was like, man, Cold Steel actually made like a knife that's really light and easy to carry around. Ergonomically, it's pretty freaking good, man. I don't feel that clip because they kind of have a flat spot, not just a bill. The ergos are nice. My hand kind of butts up against this kind of parrot beak thing going on here. And that's something I really dislike about the knife is this. I really think this makes the knife look really weird and bad. But we'll talk about that more in a second here. I don't think this knife is designed very well. And it has to do with this. And we'll talk about that in a second. But first I want to talk about the Atlas Lock. So basically there's a coil spring down here that gives it tension. It's pushing it up. And there's kind of a fork that kind of comes along either side of these pins right here, locking the knife in place. To unlock the knife, you got to pull that down out of the way, and then it can swing shut. Very similar to the shark lock. Um, but on the shark lock, it kind of forces like this little nubby thing up into a spot in the tang of the blade, and then you pull that down to get it out of the way, and the blade can swing shut. So it's not instead of a fork, it's more of a nub. Um, both are extremely strong. I watched a video where they hung like 400 or 500 pounds of weight off of the handle, and it was fine. Um, it is really strong, and the shark lock is as well. Both very, very strong. Um, Now you'll notice that it's kind of further down towards the butt of the knife than the shark lock. And that I don't love because say you're holding the knife, you need to close it. You can't just bam, you kind of have to reposition, put your hand a little further down the knife and then do it. If I have the knife and I want to close it without moving my hand, I'm kind of like doing this weird curly thing way down there to get it. So I find myself kind of, cutting, reposition, close. With the shark lock, cutting, bam, you're right there. Cutting, bam. So I like the position of it better. Also, I feel like the shark lock grips my finger better. The jimping is finer on the shark lock. You can see it's very fine up there and not as fine here. Also, you can get your finger further in there with the shark lock. See how they kind of carve out that spot for the tip of your finger to go in? That's very helpful because you're more on it. With this, it's kind of just the very tip of your finger that you can get on it. So it's not as comfortable and it's not as easy to pull down. Pretty much in every way, it's just not as good. Is kind of what I'm saying here. Now, as far as like how smoothly, like how free swinging the blade is when it's pulled down, very free swinging on the shark lock. When the lock is not engaged, there is nothing holding that blade from swinging around, which is good. On this one, not as much. They're both on bearings. And that could have something to do with the tension on the log on the pivot or whatever it is, but just looking at it, judging it right now, not very free swinging shut. I pull this down, the knife doesn't want to go by itself. You kind of got to shake it a little bit. This with the shark lock, you pull it, the knife just falls. It's going home, baby. Not so with the engage. Now let's talk about the nub. This knife would look way better like this. Look at that. That's not a bad looking knife at all. Look at that. Weird looking knife. So I was looking at this thinking, why is it there? And could it be modded to where you cut that off and just make kind of a flat choke up spot right there? And I was thinking it would be a good idea until I closed the knife and looked at this area here. This is already poking out quite a bit, and it's being covered up a lot by this bill. If this was gone, there would be a very large kind of 90-degree corner right here exposed, which I don't think is a big deal. But I mean, it would look weird when it's closed, but open it would be fine because it would just be a flat spot right here. So I kind of get why they did this. It's kind of to cover up this whole, part of the blade that's in here. And they still didn't cover up quite all the way because it's still poking out a bit. So I just don't think it looks good. I just don't. I think they could have designed this in a way where they didn't have this big corner here, and they also didn't have to try to cover it up. I'm not a knife designer. I don't know why or if they needed to have this for whatever reason, but you very rarely see that, and it's usually to cover up a flipper tab. Usually if you see like a beak like this, it's to cover up a flipper tab, which there isn't one here. So I'm not sure. It's kind of odd. but it's designed in such a way that they felt like it needed to be like this. So that's really my major complaint with the knife is I don't like that thing. It's pretty comfy when you're choked back here, but also I feel so far away from the edge when I'm back here. I wish I was right here, but I can't be. I mean, you can hold it like this. It feels weird though. But if this was just a flat spot, man, it would be really nice. You'd get right up here, nice and comfortably. So there you go. That's about it. The cold steel engage. I think the lock's a pretty cool idea, but every time I use it, I just think, man, this isn't as good as a shark lock. You know what I mean? So I really don't think I would ever buy one of these engages. I know there's a smaller version of this too. Every time I use it, I'm like, man, not as good as the shark lock, huh? So that's where I'm coming from. That's my opinion on the engage. I'm really glad I finally tried one. And I am going to do a cut test with it. So that's going to be cool. Definitely needs a little bit of a sharpening, maybe just a strap. So I'll do that before the test. So yeah, this could be a great cutter. We'll find out. It's definitely going to slice pretty well. Blade stock's thin, all that good stuff. Behind the edge is pretty thick though. Let's measure quickly. Wow, yeah, 25 thousandths. Now the angle is laid pretty far back, so that's obviously contributing. 25 thousandths and then 25 again. Let's try the 20.5, which also has a pretty wide bevel, edge bevel. I think it's about the same. It looks to be about the same, so that's good. That'll be a good comparison. On the 20.5, it's about the same. Yeah. Well, a little thinner, about 23 thousandths. Yeah, so about the same. Interesting. I didn't realize this was so thick. And this is a decent cutter. It's not the best slicer, but I like the shark's foot blade. Now, the shark cub is the slicer of the bunch. Really thin blade stock, and this was one of the best cutters I had ever tested. And I think it's relatively thick behind the edge too, just because that edge bevel is so wide. Yeah, 24 thousandths, 24. But, that combined with the very thin blade stock makes this a very, very good cutter. So, yeah, if you have a wide edge bevel, behind the edge thickness being high, being thick is not always bad. Sometimes when you just lay that back, that's just what happens. So it might be totally fine, because this one does have the thin blade stock as well. So the cut test will reveal those secrets to us when we do it. And the action, not much of a detent, but the shark lock doesn't have much of a detent either. It's just the nature of the lock, pretty much zero detent actually. But, give it some force. You can get it to flick out. Reverse flick. Yeah, you can do it. It feels about the same as the shark lock, really. Yeah, it feels about the same, actually. But as far as in the closing, shark lock feels better for sure. So there you go. That's it. Please like the video before you leave. I'd appreciate it very much. And I'll see you later.